Welcome to course Ergonomics in Automotive Design. Now we are going to discuss our sixth module, that is entry and exit by drivers and passengers. So under this topic we will discuss three subtopics. First one, consideration of vehicle features and dimension to ensure ease entry and exit. Second subtopic is problem faced by occupants during entry and exit. These occupants are both drivers as well as passengers, and evaluation of ease entry exit, how we can evaluate the entry exit process if there is any difficulty or what type of improvement is required. Now first we need to know why this entry exit study is important in case of automotive design. Firstly, identifying various problems associated with ingress and egress of a vehicle faced by the drivers or occupants of varying age, somatotypes, anthropometric and biomechanical characteristics. So drivers and occupants may be of different types in terms of their age, somatotypes, anthropometric characteristics, biomechanical characteristics. So based on that they differ in their entry exit pattern, and also they face different types of problems during entry exit. If we can identify those problems faced by different types of drivers or occupants, then we can go for redesigning that vehicle, or whenever we are designing a new vehicle or modifying the existing vehicle, then we can address those lacunas related to ingress egress. Then ensuring quick and comfortable ingress and egress by avoiding awkward postures like twisting, stretching, bending forward, leaning. At the same time reducing the muscular effort for lifting the body weight from the seat or gradually lowering down the body weight or and settling on the seat. Then avoiding excessive or extreme range of motion of body joints during entry and exit process. So these are the various aspects which we need to ensure during automotive design, particularly to ensure and safe and comfortable entry exit. Now while we are discussing about entry exit, then we should know various design features of the vehicle, particularly associated with the door openings, and how those dimensions or design features actually affect the entry exit by different types of drivers. So first, if we look at this image, here there is different markings are there. So if we start from the rocker panel, so first this bottom, this one is the rocker panel, then rocker panel is constituting the bottom part of the door opening. Then there is B pillar, here is the B pillar, then roof rail is the, so first rocker panel, B pillar, then roof rail, then this portion, that is the A pillar, then bottom of the A pillar there is the door frame, this portion. So all this portion actually constituting the door openings, and these dimensions have significant role in the ease of entry exit. So various vehicle components which are associated, as we already mentioned, rocker panel, B pillar, roof rail, A pillar, door frame under A pillar, then door opening angle, that is also important, also not shown in this case. Yes, it is little bit shown. So the angle between the rocker panel and the lower edge of the door opening door panel. So that angle is also important for the ease or comfortable entry or moving the feet by the passengers and as well as the drivers. Then positioning and design of the seats, steering wheel, door grab handle, opening handles. So these other components which are not directly associated with the door opening, but these are also influencing the entry exit process. Now if we look at this particular image, here the driver seat is shown, at the same time door opening is also visible here. So it is indicating the ingress egress related various dimensions from seating reference point. If we consider this is the seating reference point, from seating reference point these are the various dimensions which are associated with the entry exit process. So first if we consider this one T, so T is the vertical clearance dimension which from the seating reference point to the roof rail. So this height is actually ensuring that how much head bending or neck bending is required during entry by the or exit by the driver. So this is actually related to head clearance. Next, another dimension is the h. This h dimension is the distance from the seating reference point to the A pillar. So, this is also important because it defines the head swing clearance to the A pillar during leaning and torso bending. So, while the driver is going inside, they need to bend their torso and neck and then enter. So, this dimension, how much is the distance from the seating reference point to the A pillar, this distance actually matters for the ease of entry or exit from the vehicle. Then next dimension is the k dimension. This is related to knee clearance dimension. So, this is the distance from the seating reference point to the dashboard or the steering wheel hub. So, this distance actually indicating that how much space is available, so that there should be sufficient knee clearance while the driver is sitting on the seat and adjusting the seat, the knee should not touch with the lower edge of the steering wheel column or the instrument panel. Then next important dimension is the f. This f is the distance between seating reference point to the forward edge of the door opening. So, f defines the foot clearance to the lower front area of the door opening. So, this dimension is also, this corner is very important, because while the drivers keeping their leg from outside to inside of the vehicle, they need to cross this area and there is a possibility of hitting their feet with this corner. So, how is the design of the corner and what is the dimension of it? These two important variables actually deciding that how much there is the chance of collision between the driver's feet and this door opening. Next, another dimension is the B dimension, that is the defines the top of the rocker panel, that how is the height from the rocker panel to the seating reference point. So, if this height mean how much is the, in other term we can mention how is the height of the SGRP from the rocker panel surface. So, this is also deciding that how the driver can sit on the, can enter in the vehicle and sit on the driving seat. Another dimension is the R, that is R defines the forward edge of the B pillar. How is the distance of the seating reference from the forward edge of the, this is the B pillar forward edge. So, forward edge of the B pillar and the seating reference point, how is the distance between these two dimensions, that is defined by the R. So, these various dimensions related to door opening is actually defining that if these dimensions are larger in size or bigger in size, then what will happen? Drivers will be able to go the inside the vehicle easily, at the same time during their egress they will be able to come out easily without much effort and without hitting any of the body parts with the vehicle components. Now, apart from the driver's seat, there is also, so the scenario for the co-passenger beside the driver's seat is almost similar like driver's seat only, but the passengers who are sitting on the rear seats, for their entry exit, the rear side door dimension we need to consider, that how much is the door opening and how it is affecting. So, now if we look at this image, then we can see the width, that height of the door from the rocker panel, this dimension from the rocker panel to the roof rail, this height is actually showing that how much head clearance is available while the driver is entering, the passenger is entering inside the vehicle. Similarly, this horizontal distance starting from the B pillar to the C pillar, this dimension is indicating the lateral space or horizontal space available for the entry or exit process. So, width of the height of the door opening as well as the width and height, these two are very important dimension for the entry exit of the passenger. Then knee and feet clearance space. So, from knee and feet clearance space between the two seats, this is the rear seat frontage and this is the rear edge of the front seat and this is the front edge of the back seat. This distance between the rear edge of the front seat and the front edge of the back seat, this distance is actually available for keeping the leg of the passengers. So, how much this space is available, that is ensuring the how much ease will be in keeping the leg inside. So, in this case the front seat, that is the driver's seat or the co-passenger seat, adjustment of the front seat on the seat track travel, if the seat track travel is actually determining how much space will be available between these two rows of seat. If the front seat is moved backward, then automatically this space will be reduced. But the design should be such that the passenger on the rear seat should be able to keep their feet below the front seat. Then designing of the vehicle body panel at the bottom of B pillar is crucial. Then at the bottom portion of the B pillar, this particular area, this portion is important, because when the passenger are putting their leg from outside to inside across this area, or while the driver is bringing his feet out over this rocker panel, then there is fair possibility that feet can touch this corner. So, how is the design of this corner and how much is the lateral space available, that actually deciding the possibility of collision of the feet of the passengers sitting on the rear seat with the bottom portion of the B pillar. Then design and position of the C pillar. So, C pillar is also important, because C pillar actually showing that how much lateral space will be available. If C pillar is relatively rearward, then the space available, lateral space will be more. So, this C pillar and its design also important in case of entry exit by the passenger. Apart from these door related dimensions for the rear seat passenger, there are other vehicle components like grab rail handle at the roof rail. So, inside this roof rail, we can see this type of grab rail handle. So, those handles are also important, because while passengers are entering inside the vehicle or coming out from the vehicle, then they hold this type of grab rail and lift their body weight and then come out, or while they are going in, hold this grab handle and then gradually lower down their body weight on the seat. So, this grab handle position and its design is important for entry exit process. Similarly, there is also cuff handle on the inner side of the door. So, for pulling the door, closing the door, for that purpose the location of the cuff handle and also the opening of the rear door, these aspects are important for entry exit process. Now, inside and outside door handle. So, from this image you can see these are the outside door handle for the front compartment, that is for the driver compartment, and this is the backside compartment for the passengers. So, how should be the design of this door handle and how should be the dimension? So, if we consider the height of the door handle from the ground, so if we decide the height from the ground, then how much that height should be? The height should be such that all the driver population, starting from the 5th percentile body dimension to the 95th percentile body dimension, can be easily access the handle and they will be able to open that one. And also so one is anthropometric dimension, at the same time force capability to open the door. So, obviously the required pulling force should be 5th percentile or less than that for opening the door. So, height of the outside door handle should not be above standing shoulder height of the 5th percentile female. At the same time, it should not be below the wrist height of the 95th percentile male. So, this dimension should be such that it should not be below the wrist height of a standing 95th percentile male, mean whose people with 95th percentile wrist height will be easily able to access this door handle. At the same time, it should not be above the shoulder height of 5th percentile female, so that they can also, people with shorter dimension, they can also easily open that door. Then lateral position of the door handle. So, this door handle should be positioned as much as possible to the rear side of the front door, mean gradually it should be moved laterally as much as possible up to this rear edge, so that while the driver or passenger is opening this front door, the lower portion of the front door, this portion should not touch the shin or the lower leg of the driver. So, for this purpose it should be positioned as much as possible rearward towards the edge of the front door. Then inside door handle. The inside door handle or cuff handle should be positioned in such a position it should not be below armrest height and not above the shoulder height. So that all the drivers of different body dimension, they can easily access the door and easily close the door. Then handle grasp, and there are other grab handle also at this position with the roof rail, those also help in entry exit process. While we are discussing about this inside or outside door handle, grab handle, one important aspect that the dimension of the door handle should be such that at least 4 fingers of 95th percentile arm, that is the hand breadth of 95th percentile person should be accommodated. So that 4 fingers can go inside and can pull the door handle. On the other hand, we also have to think that drivers in a cold environment can also wear gloves. So while they are wearing gloves, so that space should be available, that much clearance should be available, so that with the glove hand they can also open the door handle easily. Now door and hinge angle. So as we discussed earlier, the outer edge of the rocker panel and the lower inner edge of the door panel, so this gap, this angle is very crucial for the entry exit process, because through this area actually leg feet comes out or goes in. So for this purpose, foot movement space between the outer edge of the rocker and the inner edge of the map pocket should be sufficient enough. So how is the recommended limit? So door opening angle should be 65 to 70 for front door and 70 to 80 degree for the rear door, as suggested by Vishay 2016. The top of the door hinge center line should be slightly inward and forward to improve the head and shoulder clearance to the upper front corner of the open door. So the door hinge should be positioned in such a way, particularly that upper portion inward and forward most position, so that while the door is being closed, then the upper edge of the door should not hit the head and shoulder of the driver. At the same time, this type of hinge arrangement will also help in closing the door easily. Now, seat design and positional aspect. Where the seat should be positioned and what are the design aspect of the seat which facilitate the comfortable and ease entry exit. So first we have to avoid the side bolster. The high side bolster, if the side bolster are high, then what will happen? It will actually create problem in entry exit process. Due to this high side bolster, the people with aged people or people with disability or physically weak people, then they will find difficulty to lift their body weight and then go inside the seat, or while they are coming out from the seat, they have to put extra effort to lift their body weight and then coming out. Moreover, the sliding over the seat or rotating the thighs, pivoting on the seat, it will be also difficult while this type of high raised side bolsters are there. So moreover, the seat should be located as much as possible outboard, so that the distance between the outer edge of the rocker panel and the seat, this distance should be minimum. Then minimal seat friction of the seat surface. So the material and the design of the seat surface should be such that it should not create any friction which actually resist the easy movement of the driver or any other passenger from the seat. Then recliner handles, side seat shields. So this here the reclining handles are there, then side seat shield, this type of plastic materials are there. So the height of all these component should be below the compressed seat surface, so that while the seat surface is getting compressed, it should not go below these components. Otherwise, these components will touch with the buttock and thigh of the passenger or driver. So that's why recliner handle, side seat shield and any other seat control should be below the upper edge of the compressed seat surface. Then the rearward movement of the driver's seat and upward and forward movement of the steering wheel facilitate the entry exit process. If the steering wheel with its column can be moved up and the seat can be moved rearward, then the available space to go inside or coming out obviously will be increased, and it will facilitate easy entry exit by the driver as well as by the passengers. Now, another important vehicle component related to entry exit process is the running boards or footboards. Now, if you look at this image, then we can see below the door, front door as well as the side back rear side door, there is this type of footboard or running board. So, this is very much beneficial, particularly for the drivers or passengers with shorter leg height. Then there are various dimensions are associated with this running board, and we should discuss about those dimensions, that how much minimum dimension should be there for the easy entry and exit process. So, now if we look at this image, this is adapted from Vishay 2016. So, if we consider this L, the dimension L, that is the okay. So, first before that we should mention what is this image. So, this is actually the cross section. If we take the cross section of this running board, then it will look like this. So, this is the rocker panel, and below that rocker panel is the footboard or that running board. So, now the distance, lateral distance between the rear edge of the outward edge of the rocker panel and the front edge of the footboard or running board, this distance should be at least 5 to 5.5 centimeter. It allows foot placement during the climbing inside the vehicle or getting down. Then the dimension T, that is the space available between the bottom of the rocker panel and the running board. This height, how much this height should be? It should be 5 centimeter, so that the people with higher feet height or with shoes can easily keep their foot like this. Then the next dimension is W. This dimension W allows for shoe support, and its dimension should be 12.5 to 15 centimeter. Next dimension is the H. This is the height of the running board from the ground level. So, the recommended value is the 45 centimeter from the ground. So, if we can follow this type of recommended dimensions while we are designing the running board or footboard, then that will ensure easy and comfortable entry or exit by the people with shorter leg height. But it may, if this, but on the other hand, if this dimension mean W is relatively bigger when it is coming out, then what will happen? That may create problem for the taller driver or taller passengers while they are keeping their while they are moving their leg from the ground inside the vehicle or on the rocker panel. Then this portion may touch with their feet, because they are not going to use this footboard or running board. So, while their leg is moving from the ground, the feet is moving, leg or feet is moving from the ground to the upper surface of the rocker panel, then this extended portion of the running board may get touched with their feet. Now, driver with short leg, predominantly women. Now, we are discussing problems faced by drivers with different anthropometric and somatotype, as well as other drivers with disabilities, aged. So, we will discuss different types of drivers and their problems in the entry exit process. So, first we are discussing drivers with short legs. So, generally it happens for the female drivers and with 5th percentile leg dimensions. So, how they find? They generally complain that seat and top of the rocker panel. So, this is the seat height and the top of the rocker panel from the ground. So, seat height from the ground as well as the rocker panel height of the ground is too high for them. Step over is too wide. The step over, in this is the distance sideways from the rocker panel to the vehicle floor. This lateral distance, that is also too wide for them. They have to pull their leg from outside to inside, and that distance travelled is more, they feel. The clearance between the driver's knee and the instrument panel and or the steering wheel is insufficient, because they move the seat in forward direction. When they move the seat forward direction for accessing the foot pedals as well as the steering wheel, automatically the distance or the space, knee clearance space between knee and this instrument cluster or the column of the steering wheel reduces, and as a result they complain that space is relatively less for them. So, here you can see this is the space, available space is very less for them. Now, like drivers with shorter leg length, similarly there is also problem for the drivers with larger lower limb dimensions, particularly for 95th percentile lower leg dimensions. The seat track does not extend sufficiently rearward. They feel that seat should move more backward, so that their upper leg will be accommodated comfortably. The frontage of the B pillar is too far forward. As they are moving their seat backward, so automatically the B pillar is coming forward for them. They are moving inside as they are moving their seat rearward direction. So, the B pillar is coming, they are feeling that the B pillar is more forward for them, it should be little bit rearward, Then leg room is insufficient to move the legs from ground to inside the vehicle. Then the space available here, that space is also relatively less, so that they can move their feet from outside to inside the vehicle. The space between the open door and the vehicle body is insufficient. Similarly, this angle, this space is also less, so that they can feel the space is not sufficient for them for moving their leg from outside to inside, or while they are coming out during the egress process or exit process, then this space is not sufficient for accommodating their foot length. So, for this type of drivers whose lower leg dimension is more, or the drivers whose upper body portion with taller torso in 95th percentile torso dimension, they also find different types of problems. Upper part of the door opening is too less for them. So, they find the upper edge of the this roof rail, the height of the roof rail is relatively low for them. They need to bend forward, they hold the steering wheel, then they need to go inside. So, this dimension is not appropriate for them. On the other hand, they also feel the A pillar is too close for their head while they are bending their head to go inside. As the roof height is relatively less, they bend their torso forward and the head reaches almost towards the A pillar. So, they feel that A pillar is too close to their head, it should be moved little bit forward, and they have the, due to their bigger torso dimension, they have insufficient head clearance. Now, we are discussing about some information from a research paper, particular review paper by Frizzle et al. In 2014. In the review paper, they mentioned the impact of roof height of vehicle in the entry exit process. So, they mentioned short person required almost the same roof height as the tall person during ingress or egress, despite a 120 millimeter difference in seating height between a short woman and a tall man. So, the data which they considered, according to that data, although there is difference between shorter woman and tall man, and the difference is about 120 millimeter, mean 12 centimeter, but there is no significant difference in the roof height for both of them, mean as per their response. So, that is why they reported a short person require almost the same roof height as the tall person. The short participant, according to their data, that mean height 1594 millimeter plus minus 28, adopted a more upright trunk position than tall participant. The tall participant height is 1835 millimeter plus minus 23 centimeter, when the head was passing under the roof from the lesser space between the seat and the steering wheel. The difference between the acceptable and unacceptable roof height was determined to be 45 millimeter as per their study. In the same review paper, they also mentioned the impact of door sill design and seat orientation on the entry exit process. So, large sill width, that is the rocker width, increases the potential for the left leg to collide with the sill during the egress. So, there is possibility that left leg may collide with the sill, that is the rocker width. Seat orientation, upright versus recumbent position, can also impact on the driver's range of motion during ingress egress. Range of motion of the right knee, right hip and trunk are greater during ingress egress with recumbent seat in compared to the upright seat. So, if the seat is in recumbent position, then the range of motion of the right side of the body, that is the right knee, right hip, trunk, these for all these body parts, the range of motion is relatively high. The trunk range of motion was reported to be significantly greater during ingress than egress. Older, obese and mobility challenged drivers, they also find different types of difficulties in the entry exit process. So, they feel the seat is either too high or too low, indicating difficulty in climbing up or settling down. So, as they have the physical problem, so they find to lift their body weight from the seat and at the same time sitting on the seat. So, for that purpose they feel that seat is either too low or too high for them. Then step over is wide. The step over, that is the outer edge of the rocker panel to the inside rubber seal. This distance, they also feel this distance is also wide, because they need to lift their leg by contracting their leg muscles, and they have to move their leg from the outside and move over this rocker width and then go inside the vehicle. So, for this purpose they need to put effort to pull the weight of the leg, and as it is difficult for them to lifting the lower leg. So, they feel the step over is too wide. Upper part of the door opening is less, because they need to bend forward, they have to lean and then they need to enter the vehicle. Then clearances for the thigh and tummy are insufficient. If the driver is obese or fat, then what will happen? The available space, although they are adjusting the seat, but the available space between the steering wheel and the thigh and the driver's stomach, the space is relatively less for them. Now, Institute of Consumer Ergonomics 1985, they reported various problems related to entry exit by the elderly drivers. So, here you can see from the images the use of A pillar in two places, as he. So, they need to use, this is the A pillar, they need to hold this portion as well as this portion while the person is going inside. Less clearance is observed as proximity of the head to the upper edge of the door opening, and this space is also relatively less. Now, if we look at this image, then obstruction of the feet by sill, that is the rocker panel, and A pillar or door frontage. So, this portion, rocker panel and the door front portion, this space is relatively less for them, and it creates obstruction for their feet movement. Use of steering wheel and sill for support. So, they prefer to use steering wheel, but they prefer to hold steering wheel and the sill or that rocker panel portion to go inside or coming out from the vehicle. Similarly, for the elderly person, they need to use the dashboard for the support and the use of door handle in order to start closing the door before completely entry is effected. So, they prefer to move the, in case of elderly people, they sit on the seat, then they try to drag the door little bit inside, because once they are seated on the seat, it is not possible for them to lifting their body weight again and bending sidewise to reach the door handle. So, for that purpose they prefer to move the door little bit closer to them while they are going inside. Then they also in this report by Institute of Consumer Ergonomics 1985, it was also reported various problems faced by the disabled drivers. So, as it is shown in this image the person using a steering wheel to aid stability and support. Here it is shown that using cantrail or roof as well as the wheelchair for the support while going inside or coming out. Then hand support, similarly for the physically challenged person while they are going inside the vehicle, then they are holding they are taking the support from the B pillar by holding that middle of the B pillar, but they are also finding obstruction of their feet by the protruding part of the pocket attached with the door panel. Now, the design of entrances of car for elderly and disabled passengers, for that various guidelines has been provided by Petgel 1995. So, variables here in the left side column, variables are mentioned and what type of alterations are required, that is mentioned in this right side column. So, doorway width, the back door post could be moved back and forth without steps forming a maximum doorway width of 1000 millimeter, mean 100 centimeter. Then seat position, the seat could be moved back and forth in 18 steps of 12 millimeter. So, seat should be moved forward and backward in 18 steps of 12 millimeter. Then door sill height, the door sill could have the heights of 0 millimeter, which means a flat floor, mean it is same as the vehicle floor. Otherwise, 45, 90 and 13.5 millimeter above the floor in the mock-up. The sill had a rectangular cross section with breadth of 90 millimeter. At the highest height, the sill could have a sloping side of 45. Then doorway height, the height of the doorway could be altered in steps of 50 millimeter between 1230 and 1630 millimeter above the ground. And for door angle, the angle to which the door opens could be varied without steps up to 90 degree. So, maximum 90 degree door opening could be provided. In our earlier discussion we mentioned, so if we look at this slide, so for the front door it should be 65 to 70 degree and for the rear door it should be 70 to 80 degree, but right now we are discussing that at the most it can be provided as 90 degree. Now, problem faced by the occupants during entry exit. So, Cause et al. 2009 reported the various 5 important mostly cited car elements affecting the car entering and exit discomfort. So, these 5 elements are sill width from H point. So, 30% of the people reported that they find problem associated with the sill width, that is the rocker panel width. Then sill height above the ground. So, 30% of the people reported that the height of the sill, mean this is the rocker panel height or the sill height from the ground. In 30% of the study people reported that they find difficulty for this height. Then doorway height from the each point, that is reported by the 11% people. Then doorway, this is the doorway height, 11% people reported that they find difficulties for this one, doorway height. Similarly, 13% of the people reported that doorway width from the each point. This doorway width they have difficulties or they find that is insufficient in case of 13% people. Then seat height above the ground, they find difficulties or these are the reason for the discomfort reported by 16% people. So, these are the 5 design elements associated with the discomfort for during entry exit as reported by the Cause et al. 2009. Now, different strategies are followed by the taller and shorter driver during entry exit process. Taller or people with larger body dimension, relatively larger body dimension, say 95th percentile body dimensions. So, those type of drivers or passengers, they follow different types of strategy while they are entering. So, here you can see while the driver is going inside, so how they are holding either they are taking the support from the door panel, then sitting on the seat and then gradually pulling their leg inside. On the other hand, while they are coming out, that is the egress process, then they are holding the steering wheel, then bringing one leg first out, then two legs and then standing up holding some part of the door panel, and at the last they are standing and coming out. Similarly, for the shorter driver or driver with relatively smaller body dimension, particularly a female with 5th percentile body dimensions, for them they also need to hold a different portion of the vehicle while they are going in. So, gradually here you can see. So, the person to person it will vary, but as their body dimension is relatively small. So, they obviously find the height from the ground to the seat or the rocker panel is relatively more, and they accordingly they try to manage and enter inside the vehicle. Similarly, during coming out they also here you can see this particular case, that the driver with smaller body dimension or relatively or 5th percentile body dimension, they are holding the steering wheel, then the side of the B pillar and then coming out from the vehicle. Now, evaluation of ease and entry and exit. So, various methods are used in the industry to study entry and exit by occupants to ensure ease and comfortable entry exit. So, for this purpose there is application of corporate design guidelines developed by the companies based on the various standards and feedbacks collected from the users and customers. Moreover, in industry also various international automotive standards like Society of Automotive Standards, Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards, these type of standards are adopted for ensuring ease and comfortable entry exit. Then there is also virtual ergonomic analysis using digital human model in simulated vehicle environment. So, various researchers are already reported that how digital human modeling software can be used for virtual ergonomic evaluation of the entry exit process, and accordingly how we can guide the design modification process. So, here three references are given. Baumann 2001 demonstrated how digital human modeling can be used for ingress egress evaluation in the heavy vehicle development. In this research paper, he showed that how for heavy vehicle like truck, while the driver is climbing up or getting down, then 3 points of contact to be maintained, either 2 hand 1 foot or 2 feet and 1 hand. These 3 contact points should always be maintained to maintain the balance of the driver while climbing over the stairs or going inside the vehicle. Another paper reported by Karmakar et al. 2011 demonstrated how ingress egress could be evaluated for a crew cabin of Indian Army vehicle. So, what type of door grab handle should be provided, how much should be the step width, then step height for the ladders. So, this type of informations have been provided in that paper. Then Baker et al. Investigated the vehicle ingress by military personnel following an accident. While the vehicle is not in upright condition, toppled down, then how the drivers or the army personnel can come out from the vehicle has been reported by Baker et al. 2013. Then usage trial involving representative subjects. So, representative subjects can be called for trial of the vehicle or the mock-up. So, in that case observations are made during performance of different tasks by the subjects to uncover problems experienced, for example, hitting heads or knees while entering the vehicle and the types of body motion used during the task. So, for that purpose subjective evaluation can be done as well as objective measurement is also possible. So, subjective evaluation generally done based on the questionnaire interview. At the same time on that questionnaire different types of rating scales are used. In objective measurement process, electromyographic study, motion capture using camera, then joint kinematics, these are the process for objective measurement of the to study the entry exit process, the what type of problem, mean how is the entry exit process or how difficult the process, and accordingly we can go for the design modification. Now, here we are discussing about one research paper where Giacomin and Quattrocolo in 95 described about the how we can take the rating regarding the sill height, roof rail height and other seat other variables like seat dimension, then rear seat height. So, they asked the subjects to rate the rating scale where A is the very comfortable and 5 is the very uncomfortable for different vehicle components. So, for sill height, so average subjective ratings in during ingress egress process for the roof rail configuration. So, this is the initial roof rail configuration. If the roof rail height is reduced by -2 and increased by +2, +4 and -4 centimeter, then how is the subjective rating that is shown, the average subjective rating by the people. Similarly, in this graph it is shown that so earlier we discussed the roof rail height, now sill height. If the sill height is also modified, if it is increased by 2 centimeter or decreased by the 2 centimeter from the existing one, that is the base configuration, then how is the rating by different subjects, and based on the subjective rating the average and the standard deviation has been plotted here. Similarly, subjective rating are also collected for the seat height configuration as well as the seat distance configuration between the distance between each point of front seat and each point of the back seat. And based on this study, they come to the conclusion that for ingress process, the most important factor, the most important that is the variable, that is the seat height of -2 centimeter is good, and that is ranked 1 by the respondent. Similarly, seat distance of +4 centimeter was ranked 2. Roof rail height increased by 4 centimeter was ranked 3 for the ingress process, whereas for the egress process seat distance of +4 centimeter was good for and that was ranked 1 by the respondent. Similarly, the subjects also mentioned that roof rail height of +4 centimeter is good for the egress process, they ranked it as 2, and sill height of -2 centimeter means sill height means the rocker height was lower by 2 lowered by 2 centimeter, that was ranked as the 3 by the respondents. Now, evaluation of other evaluation process. So, experimentation with test buck or test rig. Observations are made regarding the impact of systematic change in various dependent variables associated with the design aspect of entry exit space on the performance of the occupant during entry exit. So, as we discussed, various door openings related dimension, vehicle components like grab handles, door handles, these are associated with the entry exit process, and their design, their dimension affect the entry exit process for the drivers and passengers. So, the experiment can be conducted in the test buck or test rig by changing the design and dimension of these various vehicle components, and accordingly we can get the test result from the test subjects following this type of experiment, and accordingly we can understand that which is the best combination and how the design should be modified, or while you are going for designing a new vehicle, then to ensure comfortable easy entry exit process, what type of vehicle door should be designed, so that the drivers and passengers should not report any drawbacks related to design in terms of entry exit. Then there is also process of task analysis. So, we can ask the drivers and passengers or the test subject to perform a series of activities related to ingress egress, and during while they are performing those tasks or subtasks, then we can go for time study and motion study, and accordingly we can understand that what type of improvement is required in the design to achieve optimal design for ensuring safe and comfortable or easy and comfortable entry exit process. Now, after discussing these various aspects of entry exit process, so what is the key learnings from this module 6? So, firstly we learnt about importance of studying entry exit for automobile, then various vehicle dimensions which are associated with the entry exit process, then problems faced by different types of drivers with varying age, somatotype, anthropometric and biomechanical characteristics, that we discussed in details. Then what are the design consideration for ensuring ease and comfortable ingress egress process, that has been discussed in various slides. We also discussed in the last portion the method to evaluate ease and difficulty in the entry exit process. Now, these are the various references which have been consulted in preparing this slide. So, I asked all of you that you can go through these references for understanding more on this topic and getting your idea more clear. Thank you.